Before the Reformation in the 16th century, there lived a woman by the name of Muckle Meg, or the Witch of Aldie. The village of Aldie in Aberdeenshire sprang up thanks to the castle of the same name nearby, which was once the baronial residence of the Keith family. This is not to be confused with Aldie Castle near Crook of Devon in Perth and Kinross, which belonged to the Mercer family. No one knew where Meg had come from originally, or anything about her past. She was what the villagers called a skilly body. She cured horses, cows and sheep, and even cured humans, which led to her being looked upon by the locals as a woman no chancey. In other words, she was seen as suspicious and quite dangerous, as she could use charms or spells to cure the animals. Soon her fame spread far and wide, and it led to many a young man and maiden visiting her cottage to hear the good and the bad of their future destiny. She knew the use of every herb, and had in her possession a stone about the size of a pigeon's egg, which had been obtained from the head of a toad. This stone had special powers that helped to heal all kinds of venomous bites and sores on people. The surface of the stone, before being used, was as smooth as glass, but after it had been put in boiling water, it became rough like sandstone. It was then applied to the diseased part of the body, and the cure followed. It became known as the Tade's stain, or Toad's stone. The little cottage where Meg lived stood slightly apart from the rest of the houses in the village. It consisted of a button ben, a two-roomed cottage, and built in the style of the day, of unhewn stone, rendered with mud and clay, and whitewashed. The roof was made from thatched reeds, and at the front door was a rustic porch, around which grew lush honeysuckle, which gave off its sweet scent when in full bloom. The whole cottage gave off an air of cheeriness and contentment. About half a mile away from the pretty cottage, on the Broomy Now, stood a huge old ash tree with a hollow centre, and it was full of large holes. It was said that sometimes at night the tree could be seen in flames, as though a fire had been lit inside it. There was a lot of conjecture about what was happening at the tree, and the older folk would have a few wise words about it, so that it was respected as a phenomenon. No one would walk past it after nightfall, and everyone in the village was frightened of it. Eventually it was decided by the villagers that Muckle Meg be consulted about it, so a group of women went to her cottage. They found that she was home that day, but to their astonishment she refused to give any definitive answer to their inquiries. When they threatened her with punishment, she said nothing daunted her. She informed them, "You darena for your very lives lay a single fingerneb upon me, for I'll gang ower to Rome, in a jiffy, and get protection for the laird." They wondered more and more about this, as Meg was a poor woman, and there was no way she could afford to go to Rome, if she foolishly attempted such a thing. But their wonder turned to terror when they asked her how she would get there. She replied, "Oh, just gimme the half o' an eggshell, and I'll be there some time in the morn." Without waiting to hear another word, the women fled the house. News of what she'd said spread like wildfire through the village, and Meg must be a witch was on everyone's lips. Later that afternoon, as evening loomed, Meg's cottage was surrounded by villagers, but she was nowhere to be found. Days, weeks, then months passed, but there was still no sign of Meg. At the end of that year, Meg returned, and in her hands was a letter which she said had been signed by the laird, and which put a stop to people harassing her. She wasn't long back, however, when she died and was buried in the local graveyard. She didn't lie long in her grave, for a big toosy man with horns and a lang tail gaed to the churchyard, howkit her up and vanished in a blench of fire. In other words, a big dishevelled and rough-looking man with horns and a long tail, the devil presumably, went to the kirkyard, dug her up, then vanished with her in a puff of pale glowing fire. Contrary to what was expected, the old ash tree continued to glow at night after her death. Eventually someone discovered the cause. The tree, being full of rotten wood, commonly called touchwood, emitted a light at night, so people believed, when Meg refused to answer their questions, that she did her cantrips within it. Her threatened voyage to Rome and mysterious disappearance all contributed to the prejudice they had against her. The truth of the matter was that Meg never went to Rome and never met the laird, but being a woman of a more enlightened mind than her neighbours, she had no difficulty in deceiving them, as most were afraid of their own shadows. The tree is long gone, as is Meg's cottage, which is now part of a wheat field. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.